Good morning, everybody. Thank you all for joining us this morning. We have the pleasure today of presenting on a topic that impacts all of our day-to-day operations in every single one of the 37 county family departments. While some of us are familiar with the procurement process, it's a source of discomfort for a lot of us. To start off, I'd like to introduce our wonderful project team and presenters this morning. My name is Rami Gindi. I'm a principal engineer in public works and have been with the county for about 24 years. Next, we have Ms. Lilia Padilla. Lilia is a mental health program manager for the Department of Mental Health and has 18 years of county experience. Next, and our procurement expert and subject matter expert is Ms. Ninfa Leneros, who is a human services administrator for Children and Family Services. Ninfa has 13 years of county experience, with 6 of which as a buyer for ISD and 3 as a procurement manager. Last but not least, to close us off, we'll have Mr. Anthony Davis, who is an administrative manager. Anthony has 20 years of county experience, of which 13 of which are with ISD. To start us off and put us in a procurement type of mood, we have a couple of questions, polling questions for everybody. The first of which is, have you procured an item through the county process that you felt was overpriced? It's a yes or no question. It's fairly straightforward. Thank you, Christina, for posting it up. And of course, 100% responded that yes, the county purchases things on an expensive scale. Next question to kind of get us in that same mood is, have you experienced long delays in receiving items ordered through the procurement process? And this, again, you know, in one of our sessions in cohort 33, we counted close to 426 years of county experience, with both cohorts attending this presentation. I imagine we have close to 900 years worth of county experience, and these polls are very telling. Again, we're coming back with close to 95% saying that the procurement process just takes way too long. The interesting thing, as we continue to do our research, is that this is a general perception of public procurement. This is not specific to the County of Los Angeles. This is across all public sectors. Stories about government buying a $200 hammer, or that the low bid is not necessarily the best way to go because it provides poor quality and poor standards, have over the years reflected very badly on government procurement. Even though a lot of these stories are interpretations of decisions that have been reported out of context, it still builds that public perception and ultimately builds a lot of rules into the process. In addition to all the horror stories we've heard about corruption and fraud, these public perceptions are often just clouded because of very small transactions that just reflect poorly on an overall procurement process. Ultimately, it leads to accountability and transparency in every decision-making process for public contractor, being a very critical component in public trust. In talking about the county, LA County now, very specifically, we rely on vendors to acquire products and services in order to support our vast operations. This could range anything from purchasing a pencil to buying a military helicopter that's then retrofitted to be a firefighting helicopter. In 2019, the county spent $8 billion, so that's $8 billion, on annual purchases and contracting spending. It's an enormous amount of money, and with that comes a great responsibility to our taxpayers. As it stands now, ISD is the assigned purchase agent for the county. They communicate to the rest of the 37 departments about what the contract codes are and what the ordinances are and what the policies. And they give guidance and delegated authorities to some other departments to carry through with purchases. ISD has gone and built a a policy and procedures manual. This is a 160-page manual that allows the departments to be all on the same page about how they proceed about purchasing items. At the latest Thinktive, ISD has actually piloted online service contracting where it allows businesses to submit proposals online and removing the paper-based process that currently exists. The pilot was just a proof of concept to make sure that we can do end-to-end e-procurement while maintaining that public trust and transparency. Again, while really ISD has done a tremendous job in streamlining these processes, the perception of overpriced and long processing time has been prevalent and has reflected on the overall procurement process. In addition, that all adds to the cost and the time that we take to process things. In addition to all the rules and regulations, the county, as a regional leader, offers a program that encourages business owners who are minorities, women, disabled, veterans, and disadvantaged to capitalize on opportunities in government procurement programs. That's on the next slide, Anthony, thank you. And what does that do? When we give preferential to certain businesses, the county gives up to 15% reduction in bids to help level the playing field for these certified businesses. With that, the objective of our project is to really make 3 recommendations to continue to improve the process while continuing the goal of maintaining our accountability to our taxpayers, which includes transparency in decision-making process, and finally ensuring that the process continues to be fair and that all the vendors are working on a level playing field. To help us focus on our efforts, we initiated a procurement satisfaction survey of the procurement managers within Los Angeles County. Lilia will now discuss the survey and the results. Lilia?
Thank you, Rami, for that. Good morning, everyone. So just like Rami stated, and we saw on the poll, the poll results within you about paying an overpriced item through the purchase orders. That's probably across the board in many departments. So based on those results, and let me tell you about my personal experience, a little bit of my personal experience of that purchase order, was a time that when my unit wanted it to buy a small gift bag to give to clients during the holidays. And to my surprise, I was very, very surprised. I wanted it to have more vendors that would provide the similar bag, but I only end up with one vendor, and that vendor only had these bags for $1 each. I could not believe it, guys. It was just a small plastic bag, nothing else. So I was very surprised, and the experience wasn't so pleasant because I thought we could have more vendors out there that can give us more choices, if you will, right? And not paying so much money. So with that, and because of the experiences and the questions about the procurement process that we all may have, we outreach 46 procurement managers in the different county departments to complete the questionnaire that you see in front of you about the overall satisfaction about the procurement process. And out of those 46 questionnaire, we received 11 completed survey. So the questions are, do you consider that the procurement process achieves the best value for the money? Anthony, if you could go to the next. Okay, so these are the results. So basically what he says is, based on the results for the poll question, do you consider that the procurement process achieves value for the money? 20% selected sometimes, 30% selected always, and 50% selected often. Next question, Anthony. So on the poll question number 2, we ask, how satisfied are you with the current procurement process? 50% are often satisfied, 30% are always satisfied, and 20% were sometimes satisfied. Next question. Anthony. Thank you. For the third question, how satisfied are you with the training and ongoing support? And this resulted with more than half of those surveyed were often satisfied with the training and ongoing support of the procurement process. Next, with poll question number 4, how satisfied are you with the general terms and conditions in the purchase agreement? Resulted in almost 2/3 of the users now being satisfied with the general terms and conditions of the purchase agreement. So what does that all mean, guys, right? And what we are proposing. So based on our team experiences in the results of the procurement satisfaction survey, there is always room for improvement, right? So Ninfa will present to you what is that we're proposing as a team to improve the procurement process. Ninfa?
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Lilia. So based on this slide, we felt that during further research that increasing the vendor pool would be the most advantageous to enhance the procurement process. So we're gonna go over 3 issues that we found based on further research from the survey results, and we're gonna provide recommendations for each. So issue number 1 is the inability to use the CalCard as a primary method for small purchases. So based on issue number 1, next slide. There are 2 payment options. There's the purchase order option and the procurement card option that the counties have in order to purchase items. However, the primary purchase order, the primary method is the purchase order. Now, I know there's a lot of information on this slide. I'm going to talk about it, so there's no need to read into it. The purchase order is pretty much a payment that is made once the goods are received and delivered. They contain a lot of terms and conditions, and the requirement for items that are from 0 to 1,500 are just 1 quote. Any high dollar solicitations are posted online and any interested vendor can bid on them. On the other hand, CalCards have a maximum amount of $1,000 for any transaction and cannot exceed $1,000 per day or $5,000 per month. The CalCard in itself as well is restrictive. So there are certain items that we can't purchase. So for example, we cannot purchase furniture, stocking or restocking materials, anything that's not intended for a work in progress project. So it seems very vague in how the policy states it. So it ends up becoming difficult to assess what you can purchase via a CalCard and what you need to purchase via a purchase order. Next slide. So when that happens, it actually, because of the purchase order is the main method and it's small purchases, it actually restricts a lot of the vendors from participating because based on the terms and conditions that are on it or having to be paid at the end, it deters a lot of vendors. The ones that do remain, some of them actually, not to say that they found a loophole, but they end up working as a broker. So what they end up doing, because we're limited to the purchase order and not using our own CalCard, is that they receive a PO that has the bid price plus a markup. They end up going online and placing the order with an online retailer. So that be Amazon, Target, whoever that might be. And then they just select the county address to have it shipped to them. Then they get paid. So in essence, they're literally just getting a PO so they can purchase our items online and getting paid for it. Next slide. So this is an example of Amber LK, who is one of our ISD vendors. And these are all small dollar item purchases. And as you can see, these purchase orders were delivered with the following packing slips. We have Target, Amazon, Smart and Final, Bed Bath & Beyond, Bye Bye Baby, Walgreens, Costco, etc. So as you can see, they're just going online, putting the address and mailing it to us.
Mhm.
So what we recommend is that requests that are under 1,500 should have the same requirements, and departments can either go through the purchase order or the CalCard method, whichever is in the best interest of the county. With that said, we feel that the CalCard should be revised to pretty much match what the PO requirements are, in the sense of allowance, right? So either or can be 1,500. So we would have to raise the CalCard from 1,000 to 1,500, and to remove the restrictions that the CalCard has to allow departments to purchase these everyday small dollar items, either online or actually going to a nearby vendor to pick up if items are needed immediately.
Mhm.
Issue number 2, unnecessary terms and conditions that result in higher costs and lower competition. So with the solicitations that go out for high dollar items, it's comprised of 26 pages of standard terms and conditions. However, on top of the 26 pages, there are special terms and conditions that the buyer has the ability to add onto the purchase order. So pretty much they get to decide which ones are applicable to each solicitation. And based on a review of certain solicitations, we ended up finding that similar commodities that went out to bid by 2 separate vendors had different special terms and conditions that were either not applicable, didn't make sense, or one was just too restrictive versus the other one. So these terms and conditions can deter a vendor from bidding because it may end up raising costs. They may not have the proper insurance. They may not able to meet these minimum requirements, and it ends up lessening the competition within this solicitation. So this is an example for consulting services. We have RFB 695 and we have RFB 769. These 2 were actually 3 weeks apart by different vendors that went out. One of them had 9 added special terms and conditions. The other 769 had 20 added special terms and conditions. This 769 solicitation had property coverage and limitation of county's obligation to pay due to non-appropriation of funds. This is for consulting services, all right? Only 4 of these added special terms and conditions match between both solicitations. The next example that we have is a preventative annual maintenance renewal. This one's actually for the same location. It was for LAC USC and the same equipment that they were gonna perform the preventative maintenance on. And it was on 2 separate years. One of them, and by different vendors, buyers. One of them had 4 added special terms and conditions, whereas the other one had 9 added special terms and conditions. Only 3 of those matched between both solicitations. And solicitation 258 had a clause that stated that the requirements were needed for a period of 3 years and renewal for an additional 2 12-month periods. So this solicitation was letting them know, hey, you're going to be required to perform this up to 5 years in essence. So what does that cause? That causes a vendor either to not bid because now they're tied to this contract, raise their prices, or even lower them because they think that they're going to get it for 5 years. But it was actually just for a 1-year solicitation or a 1-year contract. Next one. The third example is we have for office supplies. So one solicitation is for a one-time purchase. The other one is for a 3-year agreement for office supplies. But in essence, they're all the same. It's drop ship office supply items. One of them had 40 added special terms and conditions. The other one 19, and only 7 of those matched. On solicitation 372, they had professional liability that they had to provide and damage to building insurance. The other one didn't have those and had instead automobile insurance. So again, this is can be a small vendor or as big as Staples, and they're just drop shipping items like Amazon. So, so all these requirements that were added, we feel are deterring vendors away from bidding or participating, especially small businesses. On top of all that, all the solicitations that were reviewed had general liability insurance that these vendors had to meet. And that's a general aggregate of $2 million with operations and personal and advertising injury, as well as each occurrence of $1 million. So our recommendation would be for ISD to collaborate with county council and an outside specialized source to determine what really is the county's risk appetite. And what is risk appetite? Risk appetite is the amount of risk an organization is willing to accept in pursuit of strategic objectives. So sometimes we feel that buyers are entering these terms and conditions to cover all bases, when in reality, it's not required. And now you're just lessening the competition. We would feel that the county council and this third party would analyze each standard term and condition on the solicitations to really determine what is an applicable risk level for each commodity. And also standardize the special terms and conditions that the buyers are using so it can be consistent moving forward. A third issue that we found is that we feel is that the lack of understanding by vendors. So what we would recommend is for ISD in conjunction with the business at Consumer Business Affairs to actually conduct a survey with both registered and unregistered vendors and actually find out what is going on. Either why aren't you bidding, or why aren't you registered to have the ability to bid? So some of the survey questions that we feel are would be important would be, next slide. Is doing business with the county something that you're interested in? What stops you from bidding on solicitations that you are qualified for? What can the county do to better support and encourage you to bid on solicitations that you qualify for? What has your experience been like working with the county? And what changes would you like to see the county undertake on their solicitation process? Another recommendation that we feel would help vendor engagement would be that pretty much vendor fairs. Well, right now we're having vendor fairs, right? Business and Consumer Affairs hold these vendor fairs, but they're pretty much made up of the vendors and department procurement or contract buyers. So we're not inviting actual requesters, the ones that are actually ordering these items. We're inviting procurement staff that all they're responsible for is processing, waiting to get a requisition and processing the item. They don't know what the department actually needs. So we feel that holding conferences for specific commodities and inviting the actual requesters from each department to meet and greet vendors and then also discuss future needs has the potential to increase vendor involvement. So an example would be that, let's say, for example, a vendor who is in charge of manufacturing fire hoses. They can meet with the fire department staff to develop to the staff that develops specifications for these requests. During these conferences, vendors can understand the fire department's needs and upcoming projects, whereas the fire department can also better understand what other products or features are actually out there that can improve the health and safety of their staff and community. So those are our three issues and recommendations. And now I'm gonna pass it on to Anthony, who's gonna finish it off for us. Thank you.
Thanks, Ninfa. So what have we done? We've reached out to actual procurement professionals, and what the data has told us with our polling is that ISD as a county's purchasing agent has done a lot, and they do a lot right. The satisfaction results were between 60 and 80% across all polls. That's not too shabby at all. So with that said, what we did, we extracted a few key points with the issues where there was a general consensus that if these were addressed, it could improve the overall process for all parties involved, the actual procurement department and the end user actually submitting the request. So let's recap. There was issue number one of the cow card. How do we remedy that? What are some of the low-hanging fruit, if you will? The cow card should mirror the actual procurement request as far as limitations. We need to increase the minimum limit to $1,500 or maximum, I'm sorry. And we need to review the restrictions and make it more user-friendly. Right now, it's so restrictive that it just isn't practical. It is a tool that is in a lot of our hands that is really just bound up, and we can easily maximize its potential. Now, we all understand that within the whole purchasing process, there's internal controls. We need internal controls, but not to the point where it defeats the purpose of the mechanism itself. And in this case, the CalCard. Next, the next issue, terms and conditions. While there's a lot that can be said for the terms and conditions. First of all, yes, setting new risk levels, working with county council. County as a whole historically is risk adverse. We understand that. We totally get that. But until some of these are brought to the front, brought to the table, and realize that we are far too risk adverse, things won't begin to improve. So we need to shape those conversations. Setting structure for assigning terms and conditions to commodities and solicitations. Right now, based on the examples given from the research, unfortunately, it's subjective. It cannot be a subjective process assigning terms and conditions. We have to tighten that up. And we believe that's doable. And finally, vendor conferences. Connect the right people with the vendors at the vendor conferences. That is a very good vehicle to do that. How about that? What a novel concept. Let's actually have the end users present to meet with and confer with the vendors themselves. So what are the benefits from reaching out to the procurement professionals, polling, and analyzing the data that we receive? So if we look at it from a vendor's perspective, it's less restrictive, right? If it's a less restrictive process, we're likely to get a broader vendor pool, which is really the whole concept. Reasonable and consistent terms and conditions. That speaks for itself. That is inviting and it's fair. And finally, a vendor benefit, which actually benefits the vendor and the county, is competitive and pricing, to generate a broader vendor pool. You deepen your competition, and with that, you can drive down competitive pricing. So those are our listed vendor benefits. And then the county benefits. Increase the vendor pool, absolutely. That goes for, that's a benefit on both sides of the house. Increase, as well as increasing competition. So you can see how these have some dual benefits to the county and the vendor. They're synonymous. And you lower your overall cost. And who benefits from that? Well, the end user, the county departments making the request, ultimately the taxpayers, all of us as taxpayers and as county employees. And finally, to reduce delivery times. That in itself is worth its weight in gold, to reduce delivery times and the whole overall procurement process. So in conclusion, we believe that the issues that were identified and the recommendations will have immediate value to the county's overall process and ISD as the county's purchasing agent. We want to thank you for your time and attention. And this concludes our presentation. I'll stop here before I go on and get too wordy.